Okay, so we are joined by one of the best-known faces in pre-sales, Ramzi Marjaba. Um, of the thousands of people in the pre-sales profession, Ramzi was the first to actually take the steps to launch a podcast. And Ramzi, I think that kind of highlights that you're somebody who isn't afraid to kind of do things your own way. And I've noted from our conversations you have this ability to make me laugh, have a fun conversation, but kind of under the radar challenge me and borderline troll me.
Don't
Which
troll you
I'm joking, I'm joking.
much. Not in public.
Which obviously makes me think. So thank you so much for taking the time.
It's my pleasure. I was very scared of doing the podcast, but it's either I'm scared of doing the podcast or I'm scared of being stuck at sales engineering for the rest of my life. I
Right,
chose the
okay.
lesser evil.
Okay, fair enough. That's good. I'll add humility to the list of traits as well.
It's fake. It's a fake humility, but yeah.
Cool. Okay, so the first question we ask everybody is very simple. So, what do you love about pre-sales?
it's a it's a weird position where we think about problems not as well. We should be thinking about problems not as technical problems, but as business problems, right? Uh, so the fact that we can get involved in the business aspect of a business, and I have always played basketball. I was always considered an athlete, maybe not right now while being overweight, but I was always an athlete, and I think of sales engineering as the sports of the business world, as sales engineers as the athletes of the business world, because we're trying to solve a business problem. We have to perform. It's not just sitting behind a desk and writing code or doing network design or trying to figure out a bug. We're doing a lot of performance and where we have to solve a business problem through technology. And that's kind of how I feel about it. It's a very competitive world. When someone who's been competitive all my life, I enjoy that aspect and solving business problems, which is different than just solving technology, because what are we solving technology for? Well, usually for something that's related to business and related to money.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
No, 100%, 100%. I was just thinking actually. So the problem solving is clear, and when you talk about the competitive aspect, and I think that for you, like the performance aspect is quite important. Like, how do you increase your performance? Are you is that because of constant improvement for yourself? Like, you want to be competitive with yourself, or you actually like competing against other organizations and winning and being part of a team that kind of wins things?
Both. So I've always judged myself based on my own thing. Like, I'm getting better at X. With sales engineering, it's difficult to judge that unless you win a deal or you lose a deal. If you're winning more deals than you were in the past, it's easy to judge that you're performing better. Hopefully, hopefully customers are buying because of you, not despite of you. So yeah, like, I find that very useful. But there's also another aspect of performance, and what I mean by that is, like, when we played basketball, we practiced all the time, but then we had to go and perform on the court. And same with sales engineering, where we have to go perform a discovery call, perform lunch and learn, perform a demo. It's all, I mean, yeah, it's still ourselves. I don't mean performing as an actor, but I mean performing as doing the job in public in front of people and getting the information that we're trying to get out of that.
Yeah. So it's like a performance on the day. Brilliant. And maybe we can take this parallel with sporting into hiring as well, because I think there are some parallels in
Yep.
terms of, when teams go out to recruit, there's a big difference between, a bad hire, a good performer, and a superstar, and the same kind of different. There's that kind of the blend of intuition and using the science and to identify who will fit in best with the team.
When I talk to hiring managers, the thing that kind of drives me crazy is that they don't look for SEs to hire before it's time to actually hire, right? And if you've read the John Kerr's book, the Sales Engineer Manager Handbook, he talks about recruiting as in meeting SEs before you have to hire, like digging your well before you have to actually drink. So that's the part that, as I see sales engineering today, not many hiring managers go out there and meet people when they don't have to. Like, they're focused on the customers. Some do it well. I haven't seen many do it well, where the sales engineer manager can meet, I don't know, 10, 20 SEs before it's time to hire. And when it's time to hire, the hiring process can be instantaneous, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to go through the 6-month interview process or whatever a lot of companies do today. So yeah, I mean, that's the same as in sports, where you have scouts looking for potential players, whether it's in soccer, whether it's like in Canada or the US, whether it's in university or high school, before they even get to the professional level. And then the coaches meet them, and I haven't seen a single coach put out a hiring, like a job description or a job posting for a basketball player in the NBA.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do that all the time.
It makes perfect sense, and I really love this analogy that you are using, Ramzi. And actually, this is something that we also discussed, I believe, last week, John. And we are going to release that video. It's more of a state that the hiring manager should be in, right? Not just a task. And I know that you've recorded hundreds of podcasts, and you spoke with leaders from across the profession. What have been your key learnings about hiring in general?
It's much more difficult than people think it is. So the way I've seen hiring an SE, if you hire like any kind of other engineer, for example, like a software engineer, it's a hiring manager can make a decision based on the skills that that person has. When it comes to sales engineering, there are so many different people attached to the process, where the sales engineer manager obviously is a decision maker, but a senior SE can have a voice. Similar with like software engineers, a senior software engineer can have a voice. But then you have product managers, and you have salespeople, sales managers, who are all like competing and saying yes or no. And a perfect SE for a hiring manager could be very different from a perfect SE for a salesperson. And now you kind of have to negotiate who's right and who's wrong. So it's a lot more political in terms of hiring a single SE than it is for hiring any other role. And from what I've seen, and that's just one key learning. And also, there's always pressure. Like when SE left, now everybody's yelling at the hiring manager to find the SE as soon as possible, and which sometimes leads to hiring bad SEs because they're under pressure to find the right one. There isn't the right one yet, and they don't have the luxury of waiting for the right one. So they hire one, not the right one, not the wrong, just one. And it's very dependent on luck at that time.
So you
I
think,
can talk about. Go ahead.
so you think there is too much responsibility on the hiring manager? Like, should maybe the talent acquisition take some of this responsibility, or how would you resolve this problem?
So talent acquisition, I think, I'm a believer in the concept of extreme ownership. So whoever makes the decision of hiring a person is the hiring manager, and they should take ownership. And the talent acquisition could do their job in finding opportunities, finding leads, finding potential SEs. But in the end, the decision falls on the hiring manager. And even though a lot of people are telling them what to do and asking them for stuff, it's always, if it's a good hire, anybody can take credit for it. If it's a bad hire, it's always the SE manager's fault. It's like, a coach in basketball or soccer or football, sorry, whatever sport. If the team wins, it's the team won. If the team lost, it's the coach that lost. So, same thing.
So do you think there are some red signals that the hiring managers can see? Because it was also during the last conversation, they said the bad hire is shown only after months after hiring, so you cannot actually tell whether the person is going to be a superstar or not. Can you think of something that would be worth mentioning?
I mean, yeah, I think hiring managers should look at SEs who are doing discovery on them in the in the interview process. So the interview process, in my humble opinion, is a sales process from both sides. The hiring manager is trying to close on the right SE. The SE is trying to close on the job opportunity. So how the SE treats this opportunity is how the SE will treat every opportunity going forward.
Yeah.
That's my experience. So if an SE does a good discovery, trying to understand why the hiring manager is trying to hire, what happens if they don't hire, and the SE should be able to do it because the product they're selling is themselves, and they know their strengths and weaknesses, and they should be able to highlight their strengths and weaknesses. So if a hiring manager is looking at someone to hire, and the SE does not treat the sales process as the interview process as a sales process, that's a good indication that they might not be great SEs. And when they go on to if they get the job, there are more as sales assistants than there are sales engineers and partners to salespeople. And there are many things to look at, but that's just one example. Another example that I've seen, which I'm surprised that still happens, if an SE doesn't download a freemium that the company has or looks at white papers, it seems that some people still don't do that or do their research before talking to the hiring manager. That's usually a red flag. If they didn't research for a job that can change their lives, get them a significant raise, why would they research for an opportunity where they can get like $100 in commission, for example? Like one is more important than the other. So if one doesn't treat it accordingly, it's usually a sign. So do your research. Like if they didn't do their research, if they don't know how to answer questions, if they don't follow up on questions that they were asked during the call that they didn't know. I like to send meeting notes after every interview call as an interviewee. So I get interviewed, I treat it as a discovery call. I take down all the meeting notes. Here's what you're looking for. Here's how I'm good at it. And these are the next steps. If an SE doesn't send that, how would they send notes to a customer after an opportunity, after a discovery call or whatever? So yeah, that's a major tip I would give.
This is such a nice cheat sheet for for the candidates as well. So thank you very much, Ramzi.
Sure.
And when you speak with leaders about hiring, can you think of the biggest challenges that they face?
At one point, the biggest challenge, I guess the challenge has changed. At one point, the biggest challenge was not finding enough candidates. Now there's too much candidates. But again, like trying to decipher who's going to be right for the role and who's going to be wrong for the role. And sometimes I've seen hiring managers they see potential in someone. I think John and I talked about that earlier. They see potential in someone that they know they would be great, but because they don't have the technical expertise, like the technical know-how in their specific technology, salespeople usually try to veto that individual because they want someone to start up and running. And the biggest challenge for sales engineer managers now is trying to sell that person to the other people that are involved in the interview process, in the decision-making process. I think that's one of the bigger challenges that people face as an individual contributor looking into what I hear, basically.
That's good. That's good. And it's really very astute and totally correct that it's gone from just being able to find people to actually having it's a good situation for hiring managers to be in now, where they're really looking, the assessment is the important part.
Can I add something here?
Yeah, sure.
That's why, either way, recruiting is important, where people have to meet other SEs, hiring managers have to meet other SEs before they need a job, because if there's not enough SEs, they can just reach out to the people they know and try to hire them. And if there's too much, well, they already know a bunch that they can bring in without having to go through the rigmarole of looking at 200 applications, for example.
Yeah. And also, in the same way that as a candidate, if at some point you go through the process of saying, right, which of the top 20, 30 organizations I'd like to work for, it makes sense for me now and also into the future of my career to start building a network within those organizations. For a hiring manager, there's a set amount of people that have that specific solution experience and that are in their field. And so proactively going through the process of building those relationships, it doesn't just last for one hire. It's something that once you've got the bulk of it, you can just add to over time. And I think often for working with candidates going through the interview process, it's always a leap of faith. Okay, and it always is going to feel like a risk, and that risk becomes most apparent when you have to make like a non-reversible decision to accept an offer. And if you've already established it, it's like anything, if you've already established a relationship with the hiring manager, the person's been clearly kind of chasing you for a period of time, then it just feels that much more comfortable to take the leap of faith there versus a new organization where you're talking to people for the first time.
And it's not just you don't have to build as an individual contributor. You don't just have to build a relationship with an SE manager. You can build it with SE individual contributors. You can build it with sales. And a referral is much better than a blind hire.
Yeah.
Okay? And I always tell my clients, resumes don't get you jobs. People get you jobs. So just meet people. And it could be anyone. It could be customer success, a VP of solution engineering, VP of sales, whoever it is. And you can meet with people not with the intention of getting a job. You can meet with people just with the intention of meeting people, and you might be able to be helpful to them at some point. Maybe you're not looking for a job, but you know a great SE, and if you refer them, you increase your worth as a connection to that person, and to both people on either end, and you help people. So as sales engineers, that's something we strive to do. I just remembered one big issue that hiring managers have, if you want me to share that as well.
100%.
Please.
It's the length of the interview process. And it opens up.
Is it a problem they have or they cause?
I don't know if they have or they cause. It's just the interview process. And we can talk about that in a second, but it just opens them up so much for other companies to swoop in and steal their candidates.
Yeah.
And it could be like I've been in situations where it's just because someone's on vacation. Now, instead of having an interview next week, I'll have an interview in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, what could happen in those 3 weeks?
Yeah.
And they always ask, "Oh, are you working on another opportunity?" And some SEs are honest and say yes or no, and some SEs just play it tight to the vest and not share. I think people should share, just to speed up the process a little bit, but not everybody is comfortable telling the hiring team exactly what's happening.
Super. Yeah, 100%. Okay, good. So what we thought for this conversation would be to have like a hypothetical situation. So to ask you, imagine if you're brought in as a consultant to work with a startup, just received a ton of funding, and they're looking to grow strongly, and they really want to have a best-in-class kind of hiring process. And so they bring you in to help them design that process. So I suppose looking at kind of like the as-is state as things are now versus like the ideal state. So if it's okay with you, it would be great to go through the 4 main areas and then just to get your take on each area.
Sure.
Good. And I will enjoy playing devil's advocate.
All right, cool.
Okay, all right. So first of all, in terms of candidate attraction, so job ads, employer branding, how approaches are made, I suppose the marketing, the pre-funnel marketing before you're actually in the hiring conversations. What do you think?
To hire a sales engineer,
Yeah.
I think a job description is good. It puts you out there. Everybody does that though. And it depends where they are in the startup stage. Like, do they have an SE team, or are they looking to hire their first SE? Either way, I think they should be out there networking in person.
Yeah.
As much as they can, and also like SEs are dying for a good product that solves a good problem.
Okay.
That makes their life easy. So and a lot of startups don't talk about their product very much because they don't want to share that information with the competitors.
Yeah.
Right? So the question is there a line where they can actually share that product information with specific SEs? And again, if they put their job posting online, they're gonna have 200 resumes today.
Yeah.
As a startup, do you have time to weed through 200 resumes?
Yeah.
And who's the hiring manager? Is it the salesperson? Do you already have a sales engineer manager or the first SE? They should be out there meeting people in person. I think that's more effective. Relationships does a lot more than marketing. Marketing brings eyeballs in, but not always the right eyeballs.
Okay.
And if you're looking for an SE, good SEs are not always looking to move.
Yeah.
So even if they see that, they might not move. So again, build your relationships. And if you're a salesperson right now at a company, start building your network again. So that if you become a VP of sales at a startup, you have a network of SEs that you can reach out to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's 100%. So basically what you're saying is that marketing's good, but at the same time, building your network, that kind of personal connection is important. You said, for example, SEs are dying for a good product. 100% agree on that. Something they can get behind. So bringing some proof points in there, something that really provides, kind of tangible proof that's in existence. What else do you think SEs are looking for? Because if you're gonna market it, so for example, if a hiring manager's going to talk about the position, what points are the most important things to get across, or about the organization?
Well, that's different from SE to SE, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where a discovery call is like the interview. Like the hiring manager should be asking questions not just about like the SE and their skills, but what are they looking for?
Yeah.
Versus expecting every single SE along the way to actually want the same things. Some people want to be remote, some people want to be in person, some people want hybrid, some people want to travel, right? What is it that specific SE wants? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think almost everybody wants flexibility to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Right. One big thing, if you're hiring the first SE, they want a voice.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like I've worked with many SEs who were hired as the first SE, and they keep coming to me in distress. Like they hired me to help them create the system. And now I'm in here trying to create the system that they're saying no to, and they want to continue going down the path that they were on.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna hire, and even okay, you did a great job, you found your SE. How are you gonna keep them? So that voice that they want, hear it and do something with it. They're very smart, intelligent people who've been in the business for a while. So I think one of the big things that SEs are looking for is being heard.
Yeah, okay, for sure. So in terms of general things that most SEs are looking for, a good product, flexibility, having an impact and kind of being heard and really feeling you're making that impact, correct?
Well, so there's different impacts. You can have an impact on your customer, but you also want to have an internal impact on the organization.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I just want to differentiate those two.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And in the case of the startup, it will be I suppose in the case of both, but especially a startup, you feel you've got more scope for that kind of internal impact as well.
Yeah. I mean, in case of a startup, specifically in case of a startup, the SE joined it to be the first SE to create the sales process, the pre-sales process, the sales engineering process, to be able to hire the SEs that they want, to be able to create the demos the way they want. I've worked with SEs who came in and they wanted to create the demo, but the CEO has been doing a bad demo for a while. But because they're the CEO, they can sell.
Yeah.
Right? The CEO will always have more weight than an SE. So the SE has to do it differently, but they're not allowed to because the CEO has been doing it one way, and that's how we're going to continue to do it for the rest of our lives. And the further away you are from the CEO, the less you sell. So these are just little things.
Okay, great. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. And then in terms of the next area, in terms of, because SEs can come from all different areas. So in terms of candidate pools, what recommendations would you give? So you've got, classic SEs from the competition, SEs from different solution areas, but that could learn the product. You've got consultants, people from industry, and then teachers and lots of different options that come up. What would your guidance be around how to focus on those candidate pools or how to look at them?
Let me think. The usual SE answer is it depends, right? So I have to use that. Right? How technical is the product, right? That's one question I always have.
Yeah.
So if it's very technical and it's the first SE that you're hiring, would you have how much time do you have to invest in teaching them the technology or teaching them how to be SEs? So if I never recommend someone who's never been an SE before to join a startup in the first 3 or 4 hires as an SE.
Yeah.
Because now they have to learn the product, they have to learn how to be an SE, and they have to build the SE process. And that's almost impossible because how are they going to build it? They've never been a part of it. Yeah. So I would say hire, if you're specifically at a startup, hire an SE with experience.
Yeah.
Right? more than like 2 years, like someone who's been there, who's been doing that for a few years, someone who's been able to, like when you're talking to them in the interview, they can negotiate with you on the call. And not, I don't mean about salary, but about like how an SE process should be. Like they don't always agree with you. They have their own thoughts, they can articulate it. So if you're looking at a pool of who to look at to begin with, the people who have been SEs for 5 years, for example. The second thing to look at is if it's very technical, you want someone with the technical know-how. It could be from the competitors, or it could be from anybody, right? Just as long as they have the technical know-how. Having someone from the competitor is a good thing. It's good and bad. Well, good, they already know the technology. They can plant landmines for the competitors. Bad is the perception of, moving from like company A to company B. Although if we're going to compare them back to athletes move from team A to team B all the time.
Yeah.
And some are accepted and some are not, like LeBron James when he moved from Cleveland to Miami Heat, right? And did a hoopla about it. I don't know if you watch basketball, but that's like back in 20, whatever. It's been a while. So there, you have to mitigate that perception. It could be from a customer as well, right? Someone who's, especially if you're, there's a lot of new software SaaS for sales teams. So if you hire an SE from a customer, that could be helpful as well because they know that industry. So these are the things off the top of my head that I would say. If you give me 10 more minutes of silence right now, I can come up with something else.
Thank you so much, Ramzi. And actually, I love the fact that you keep talking about building connections, building your network, and especially in EMEA, people not necessarily invest a lot of time in personal branding. So, do you have any advice for the candidate? Like, let's say, okay, the hiring manager is willing to get to know people, and of course, they're going to go on LinkedIn or maybe Twitter, but mostly LinkedIn. And maybe there are amazing great disease, but they cannot be found, if that makes sense. So how can they be found?
How can they? Well, one, they have to want to be found, right? If they don't want to be found, they won't be. Well, the simplest thing is just go on LinkedIn, look at who's posting, and comment on their posts. And it could be from EMEA, could be from US, could be from Asia, it could be from anywhere. But if they know who they want, like let's say I'm in EMEA and I would like to go and SAP is a good company that I want to track, I would go follow Jan Erik, Jan. I can't remember his last name, but Jan Erik, he's known, right? So I'd follow him, and when he posts, I'll start commenting on his posts, and then he'll start noticing me. I'll follow Rafa Luis from LifeRay, and when he posts, I'll just comment on his post, share his posts, and I'm building I'm not building a relationship, but I'm building a connection somewhat. That if I ever reach out to Jan or Rafa, they would know that this person commented on my post before, and I'll make sure like, hey, I've been commenting on your post, love your post, I don't want to connect. So it's not like people think that when they want to do self-branding, they have to come up with ideas and create creative posts and come up with videos. It's as simple as just posting someone else's post. Like, hey, I liked what this person thought, and here's why. Jimmy Barans from Yext in France. These are good people to follow and actually just start connecting, like commenting and connecting with. What else can they do? That's the first thing that they should do. Let's just leave it there. Once you do that, reach out to me and I'll tell you the next step.
Super. Thank you so much. And if we are talking about the interview process, an ideal interview process, what would be its goals and how would it be designed?
Well, the goal is to find out a few things about the SE, like how they work with account managers, how they work with customers, what happens if they're under pressure, and how much they want, right? Because budget is almost as important as everything else. How would you design it? Well, I think the way that sales engineering process is good today, but it's just stretched out, right? So generally speaking, the way I've seen interview processes are a recruiter calls, and then the hiring manager calls, and you have 2 or 3 interviews with SEs, and then you have an interview or 2 with the salespeople, and then with the VP of sales, then a panel interview where you do a demo or something like that. One, that's too long, in my opinion. If you were to do an interview, if you want that many people to interview the SE, I think they should combine in groups of 2 or 3. I don't need to interview with 3 different SEs for the same thing. Also, like each SE should. I've been in interviews where I'm asked the same question by each SE.
Okay.
And each salesperson, like they're just asking the same questions. And I think if a hiring manager wants to go through the interview process, they should give their individuals themes of what they want to talk. Like you talk about relationships with customers, for example. You talk about learning a new technology. Giving them teams so they can actually guide the team. And most SEs are not interview experts, right? We don't interview people every day. We interview people as much as people get interviewed. So give them teams, maybe practice. I think the perfect SE process or the pre-sales process is hiring manager talks to the candidate, recruiter talks to the candidate if they want. Hiring manager, step number 1 is schedule all your interviews ahead of time. Okay. So if you, so if you have, if you
itself is just an easy takeaway. It works so well. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, even if you want to do 9 interviews, schedule them ahead of time. Most SEs will not want to go through. So you already weeded out some people who don't want to go through the entire sales SE process, and it's better than finding out later. Also, that way you actually, the big thing is SE. I interview with the first one. They go and talk to the recruiter. They set up a call for the next one. That's a week, right? Week between interviews, or someone is on vacation. That's 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Schedule them all ahead of time. Know exactly who's going to interview with who. And if you want, at some point, like no longer continue with that SE, cancel the rest. Right? You don't have to keep going with them, but at least you have a time frame, just so you can speed up the process and nobody else swoops in and gives that person a deal, the deal that they want, or they just get tired of waiting for the next interview. So I guess schedule them all ahead of time. Give themes to your people who are about to interview the SE. Create problems for them to solve. One of the big things that SEs have to do is solve problems. Create problems for them to solve as they're going through the interview process. Be there for them when you're about to schedule an interview demo. A lot of hiring managers just give them a demo. Don't give them any give them they send, here's a PowerPoint slide, do a demo, and they don't give them enough instructions, and they're not available for them to answer any calls. And again, you're trying to close them. You're trying to see how they would react. If someone reaches out and asks for some time, give it to them. That's what a customer. I've never reached out to a customer or we're doing a 3-hour demo with the customer, and I never reach out to the champion within the customer, and they've said no. They're invested in my success. Same thing with hiring managers. If they say no, that means I know they don't care about me, and I just don't have to continue with the entire process. Get them an answer early on. Right? I've been in interviews where I hear back 2 months after the final interview for a job offer, and I know in the meantime they've been interviewing other people, and I wasn't candidate number 1 in their mind. They just settled for me. I still took the job because why not? But I didn't know if the job was gone. I could have gotten another job in the meantime if I wanted to. So yeah, biggest thing is just speed up the process. You don't have to spend 3 months doing interviews.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Thank you so much for offering us all these insights. I hope the hiring managers are also going to take them into consideration. And if you can think of any other advice that you would give to this consulting company about hiring in general for attracting the right candidates, do you have anything that we haven't covered yet?
Let me think. No, I think we covered almost everything that I can think of at this point in time. What do you guys think? Is there something that you want to add?
I personally got a lot of insights. Thank you so much.
Sure.
As you were saying that, Ramzi, I just thought that question is going to come back our way. So let me just think through. So I think we've covered. So what we've talked about is the importance of a hiring manager building their own pipeline, shorter processes, combining stakeholders, scheduling interviews ahead of time. I'm just going to add to what you said here. I think that because you talked about extreme ownership, for example, and so maybe that would be an extra point, that hiring managers feel that they have the support of different parts of the organization, but that they have ultimate ownership. And when it comes to scheduling interviews ahead of time, and this is just from us being on the front lines, because we're big proponents of this. And often the people that get lumbered with having to ask people if loads of placeholders can be put in their diaries, feel a bit uncomfortable doing that because of the position they're in. So there might be recruiters, there might be interview schedulers, it's not normal to do this and so on. So I think that's somewhere where the hiring manager actually can just send one email to all the hiring team saying, look, we're going to put placeholders in your diary beforehand. This is why, for this agility, because it will lead to a better result for everybody. So I think that hiring managers getting involved there can definitely kind of help. You've talked about replicating. It seems to me that you have a strong focus around replicating real life. So things like seeing if the candidate can prove to you that they want to learn by downloading the freemium version, for example. Like they'll go out with that. They don't need to hear the suggestion that they do it before they go and do it, because that's what real life will be like. And the same for discovery as well. Not to be too prescriptive, saying run a discovery session with me because then you'll see them on their best. It's more to see, well, given a limited amount of information, let's see how they react in that respect.
Yep.
And then, so you've talked about the ownership piece. I think the only thing that we would add is ongoing measurement of the process itself. So like the output of the process, you want to get people hired fast. You want to get, there's a budget considerations to take into account, but ultimately the quality component is really important. And I think companies always have this kind of really instinctive sense of like whether good hire, bad hire. But if you do that in a bit more depth, whereby, so often in modern hiring processes, you will have like a competency matrix, which actually is something we didn't discuss, which I think is worth it. So having a clear idea, if you don't know what you're looking for, you won't find it. So everybody sharing beforehand a clear idea in terms of what you're looking for. And then everybody involved in the interview panel rating the individual at the point of hire across all of those areas. And so you can then go back and the manager can then rate at 6 months and at 12 months in, and then you can go back and look at the difference between what you thought the person was, not just good hire, bad hire, superstar or non-superstar, but actually, we thought that the person would be great here in terms of communication. We were a bit concerned around teamwork, and go through the different competencies. And then when you look back over time, and especially over lots of different hires, you start to build a picture as to where your assessment process, for whatever reason, is effective, and where you're not actually assessing with much predictive accuracy how the person will turn out. And by doing that, you can then say, well, we're missing a trick here. And, this is a key part of the role, and we're not assessing that well. And so you can then start to consciously look for better ways of doing that. Sorry, I know you want to jump in, Ramzi, but the other thing is, and then in terms of individuals, so you'll have some individuals that for whatever reason have very like a high coefficient in terms of how they in terms of their ability to kind of to assess and predict, and others less so. Those that less so can have the training, and those that are doing very well can become the mentors, the champions, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I would just add one part is give weight to the sales engineers' opinions.
Yeah.
More weight to the sales engineers' opinions than to the salespeople.
Yeah.
Because sales engineers do the job and know exactly what the job entails.
Mm-hmm.
Salespeople are louder, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And I've been in situations where we interviewed a person, both myself and another SE told my manager, this is not going to be a good fit. They don't know anything about this stuff, that stuff, but they impressed the salespeople and they got the job, and they were laid off a year later because they couldn't do the job.
Yeah.
So give weight. Like if you're hiring a doctor, you don't give weight to the administrator's opinion over a doctor's opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And on that note, I think, and going back to the extreme ownership point, I think that from based on experience, that's something that a hiring manager also earns over time as well. So the more credibility they have, the more they're able, the more that sales will give them, will give them flexibility, and the more kind of weight they'll have. So, but yeah, 100%. Great. Okay, so we've come to a close. It's been a really interesting conversation. I think there's lots of really kind of practical takeaways that we've had here. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Ramzi?
I just want to thank you for the chat. This was fun, both of you. So
thank you very much, Ramzi, for taking the time to talk with us during your Monday morning.
And Ramzi, I realized I wanted to ask you to introduce yourself at the beginning. We didn't do that, so obviously we won't go back to that now. But in terms of how people can find you or projects you're involved in at the moment, what would you underline?
My website is called WeTheSalesEngineers.com with with close to 270 episodes published, podcast episodes. My YouTube is We the Sales Engineers, and my email is Ramzi@WeTheSalesEngineers. So you can reach out to me anytime with any questions. I'm happy to chat. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity again.
Super. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.